The one and only Terrell Davis, always here for fun, but actually getting paid by
I was working today.
Your employer, NFL Network, had you out here.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to ask the question, you're a national guy. You work for NFL Network, you live in LA, you're here a lot. But you're a Bronco to your core.
Yes, sir.
So kind of, how do you balance that, and what's the observation, or I want your observations on the team. So the national perception versus, maybe the way you view it.
The national perception of the Broncos is not very good. I talk to people every day, and whether I'm in the airport or interviews, and you have people who just don't see it, right? So let's just start with Joe Flacco, and they're going to go back to last season and his numbers, and even some even go a little further back than that, and they'll see Joe Flacco and say, all right, he's kind of the same quarterback. You had Case Keenum here. If you look at the last 4 quarterbacks, and it just doesn't seem like he's an upgrade. So this is national perception. It's not my perception. This is what people are saying. And then you look at everything the Broncos have done, in the draft the last couple of years. It just hasn't worked out for them. So listen, I understand, and the bottom line is, who cares about what people think, right? But that's a perception. I see it differently, because not only do I pay attention to the Broncos, and a little bit of what I say might be just a little biased, but I try to remain neutral and look at it from a perspective of, just because what people are saying about you don't mean it's true. So I look at the Broncos and I say, I think Joe Flacco, to me, brings in something that it's a known, it's something that you can work around. I can work with somebody if I know what your deficiencies are and what you do well and what you don't do well. What I can't work around is someone the unknown, is somebody who's all over the place and you can't put anything around it. You do have somebody who's got experience, got playoff experience. He has Super Bowl experience, and we have seen Joe play really well when you surround him, put him in an offense where, Gary Kubiak's offense. I think people are all talking about that in 2014, where he played well. It's kind of the offense he's going to run now. You go through the draft, you get Noah Fant as a tight end, you surround him with tight ends. You got Hireman, you still have Buddy. I mean, obviously he's coming back from a third ACL, but if healthy, I can see that being a awesome option for them. You got running backs, you got Phillip Lindsay, you still have Royce Freeman, Booker. If you want to throw them in the mix, you still got 3 very young running backs. I guess the question is offensive line. They've struggled the last couple of years up front, but you do bring in. Not only do you draft Dalton Reisner, you're bringing Jawan James for right tackle. I think Reisner's going to end up playing on the right side. And you still have Ron Leary. I think Bowles obviously is the one that people are circling, because of his history of holding and bad technique.
Right.
But then you counter that with Mike Munchak, who comes in to change this offensive line. So you got to believe that there's going to be benefit from that, and this offensive line will be greatly improved. Offensively, I think they're going to be good. I think the other question mark too is you're bringing a very young OC, Scangarello, who comes in, and I did have the kind of thought of, what if because you don't have, your head coach is not an offensive-minded coach. You don't really have anybody else in the building who is sort of the sounding board or a fallback if things don't go well, and so that's interesting, right?
Right.
Normally if you got a very young OC, first time calling plays, there's somebody in the building who is kind of, maybe it's the head coach, who if things get off to a rough start, you're like, okay, well, just sit down, I'll take over the play calling duties, and then let you try again later in the season or next year. But obviously Vic Fangio has a lot of confidence in him, and that's a great sign. Defensive side of the ball, I don't think there's a lot of questions there. I mean, I like the linebacker. You like to get a little bit more depth there. I think they're starting front 3. A lot of those guys are on contract years. So you when the contract year comes around, you should get some good play up front. And I think they're back in. Getting Chris Harris back was huge. I think Kareem Jackson coming over from Houston is who can play corner and safety. Chris is a corner and a nickel guy. And then Bryce Callahan, he's a nickel and a corner guy. So they've got some real flexible parts in the secondary. And I think that's the way they'll be able to have kind of that defense get back to what Vic likes. And they don't do a lot of blitzing. They're mainly kind of disguise, but they'll play some zone and let their defense be very opportunistic. I mean, last year the Bears scored 6 touchdowns on defense,
right.
And that's what you should expect here. You got Von Miller, and you still got Chubb on the outside, so it's like Hicks and Khalil Mack. So there's a lot to like. Now, with all that being said, they still got to play football,
right?
And we won't find out, how they look until week 1, maybe some glimpse of it in the preseason. But I don't know. I just remember being at training camp and just kind of having this mentality that it doesn't matter what we say. The only thing that matters as a player is what we do on this field, and the players got to believe they're a good unit. They can't go home and listen to us on radio or podcast and video and believe what we're saying, because we're just giving it what our perspective is, and a lot of times it doesn't look great because because history will suggest that if you have a team that has this, that chances are they're not going to be real good, and we're looking at last year's team as well.
You mentioned Phillip Lindsay, and you kind of covered the whole team, so we'll just talk about him specifically before I ask you about Mr. Bowlen. But Phillip Lindsay and you have a special relationship. Last year y'all did something pretty cool where you took him to dinner at your favorite dinner spot here in town where you would go during the week. He wears your number. He goes to the Pro Bowl as a rookie. He's an undrafted guy. You were obviously a late draft pick. You had him on your show today with NFL Network. Just tell me about that special relationship with Lindsay and what you see in his game.
It's really fun. It's cool, to be honest with you, because the first time I talked to him was a phone call where we got in touch with each other because Patrick Smythe sent me an email or a text message and said that Phillip Lindsay wanted my number because he wanted to get my blessing to wear number 30, and that's how it all started. And I'd seen him, I'd heard about him. I call in. I don't live here in Denver, so I called in. I always call in and ask people about training camps, like who's standing out, who's doing what. And the name I kept hearing was Phillip Lindsay. So that made me do a little bit more deep dive into who he was, where he came from. I knew he was from, went to CU. I know he's from Colorado. I knew his dad played football, was really good in high school football. So, but then I kind of saw the circumstances. He wasn't drafted here. He didn't go to the combine. And you're kind of puzzled, like, how does it happen? He had a real good career at CU, but even the Broncos didn't draft him. And so once we had that phone call, I kind of got I heard his attitude about that. And I just instantly was like, okay, I get it. I understand who he is. He was just confident. He had this confidence, and he was actually a little upset. And he still was upset about not only that the Broncos didn't draft him, but he was finding it hard to get some free agent calls. And so for him to be passed up like that, he had this kind of list of teams that he's like, I'm mad at. And it was probably every single team in the league. But and then we talked after that. Well, we text each other a lot. And so when he had number 30, it just kind of made sense to me when he asked me for it. And I was like, all right, you know what, man, because this was meant to be. This is not about you wearing number 30 and trying to walk in my footsteps. It's about you, about number 30 representing something that means a lot to you, and that's the underdog. It wasn't about him trying to replace me and be Terrell Davis. It was what it represented. So he saw in me what's in him, and that was a guy that started at the bottom and made it to the top. So to have somebody who was inspired by you in that way, I couldn't help but to gravitate toward the story and root him on. I told him I can't wait to see how this thing unfolds. I mean, the journey, I'll be watching this journey to see it very closely. And because I know in my mind, 8 years from now, 7 years, might be sooner than that, there'll be a time where we're at a game, I'm on the sideline, and he's going for the Broncos record. And I'll be happy to go ahead and do the final passing of the torch to give number 30. Because that's what it's about, man. I've had my time. I wore number 30, but this is not about me anymore. It's about Phillip Lindsay and he's really carrying on a legacy. And hopefully when he's done playing, they got somebody else here who wants to wear number 30. So if you can see a whole sort of line of players who beat the odds, obviously defy the odds. Right. I like to use the word defy the odds. Defy his size. He's a smaller dude. And and do things that nobody thought he can do, how special would that be?
Well, it may end up with a gold jacket in Canton, and it was fun getting to know you in the years leading up to that. And then all the jokes you made when you finally got in about how different you were going to be. But
Yes.
if anything, you've been even more accessible and more fun to deal with as a Hall of Famer. Hall of Fame's upon us a week and a half from now. We'll see you out there in Canton. How special will it be for this organization, because Champ and Mr. Bolin are going in, and this is the first time we're talking to you, at least that I'm talking to you, since Mr. B passed. So looking forward to next weekend. I guess, how excited are you?
I'm jacked. I'm jacked because for many years we've been underrepresented. Bronco players have not been put in unless, you got John, you got Shannon, you got Zim, they put Floyd in, and then it's just you're kind of like, big lull. And then there's players that deserve to be in there. Steve Atwater, Carl Mecklenburg, Rod at some point. There's going to be players that need to go in. And of course, Mr. B for many, many years should have been in. And last year, or 2 years ago, 2017, when I went in, I kind of had it in my speech where I talked about that, like Pat needs to be in the Hall of Fame. And I'm glad it's happening now. I really am. And it's really putting things in perspective on how special this franchise has been. It is one of the most winningest franchises, probably in any sport. And we just didn't have a lot of players that were going in. And now you got Pat and Champ in the same class. The Broncos are having a game there. It is going to be a really cool weekend. I look forward to it. And the only thing that's sad is that Pat won't be able to kind of see that and go through that and have that experience. But I know he's looking down. I know the big fella's looking down, and he's smiling because he may not. I'm telling you honestly, Pat may have told them he didn't want to go in. That's the kind of guy he is. He's so deflective. He don't want any credit for anything. He would have been like, "Oh, that's all right. Put somebody else in. I don't want to go in." And but he's in. So hopefully his bust and my bust are like right next to each other, so we can chop it up for the next 40,000 years.
There you go. So final thing, you're wearing your Defy hat.
Yeah.
We talked to you a couple months back as you were launching Defy, which is a CBD-based sports drink.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I get it right.
It's a CBD performance drink.
Performance
Yeah,
drink.
so,
Okay, because
yeah.
it's not an energy drink.
No.
It's not a recovery. It is a CBD performance drink. How's it going so far? Big news. You guys were not only part of the Indy 500.
Yeah.
Today it comes out, John Isner, the tennis star, best American tennis player. He's going to be representing Defy.
He's joining our team. We have John Isner. He's, like I said, a #1 tennis player, and he's a Bulldog. Went to Georgia, so that's a great thing there. It's a process, and it's a fun process. I think the thing that I'm having a great time doing is the education process, because there's so many people who don't understand what a hemp extract is right now. And that's fun for me to be able to be an advocate for that, and to be on the forefront of kind of pushing this whole movement forward. And we're definitely getting all of our pieces out there. Branding is one that we're proud of. I think when people look at Defy, they see a company that is, it's first class. We're doing things the right way. It's all based off science. We're not out there just making up stuff. And we're trying to do it the right way, so that in the process, we're trying to break down barriers and stigmas of what CBD is. I've experienced it. I didn't know anything about it, and my first thought when I heard it was, nope, because I associated it with everything else that went along with it. But it really is truly God's gift. It is a natural ingredient that helps, that is helping and has helped and should be able to help everybody. So we want to be able to get this into pro sports, and we're taking one step at a time. We already did Indy 500. We're like I said, we're in tennis now. Hopefully our goal is to be partners in the NFL, and so we're trying to get that out there. I'm actually forming a association called the Pro CBDA Association, and this is just with athletes and anybody, entertainers, or anybody who has a strong stance on CBD and who is there for the fight to have this available to pro athletes, and that's what we're doing right now.
Awesome. Well, TD, we'll see you next week in Canton. Always great seeing you here at the UC Health Training Center. Thanks so much for the time.
Anytime, B.